Hi everyone. I'm Helen from Susan's family. Today I'm bringing you a Serendipity beadwork coat with small and large sizes. The making method is the same, only the stitch count and row numbers differ in some areas. Later on, I'll use the small size as an example for explanation and demonstration. The jacket is divided into two main parts, the main body and the accessories. Among them, the main body includes the left and right front pieces, the back piece, the sleeves and the edging. The accessories include the pocket decoration patches, buttons, and beaded decoration strips. First, make each part of the main body separately, then connect them and add the edging after completion. Finally, attach the accessories at the corresponding positions. Now let's learn the making method of the main body. First, let's take a look at the making order of the main body. Lay the jacket flat, with the front side facing up. Here, I'll refer to the left side front piece as the left front piece, and the right side as the right front piece. First, make the left and right front pieces separately. Then make the back piece and the sleeves. Next, connect the front and back pieces, and attach the sleeves to the underarm area. Finally, crochet the edging along the front bands and cuffs. Let's start by making the left front piece. Looking at the chart, the left front piece is divided into three areas: the body, the underarm, and the neckline. Start by crocheting the body. Use a foundation chain to start. Then work back and forth in rows from the foundation chain upward. The stitches used are chains and double crochets. Watch me demonstrate the exact crocheting method. To make it easier to watch, I'll use cotton yarn for this demonstration. The color will be random. For specific yarn, color scheme, and hook size, please refer to the detail page of our product and the chart. First, let's work the foundation chain. Pick up the yarn tail with your right hand. Wrap it around your left little finger once. Pass it between your index finger and middle finger. Pinch the yarn tail with your left thumb and middle finger. Pick up the hook with your right hand. The hook moves between these 2 points. Place the hook underneath the yarn. Wrap the yarn counterclockwise. There's a loop on the hook now. Pinch the crossing point of the loop with your left hand. The hook is on the left side of the yarn. Yarn over. Draw the yarn through. This slip knot does not count as a stitch. Tighten the tail. Now let's start crocheting chains. Yarn over. Draw the yarn through. That's one chain. Continue crocheting chains downward. Here, I'm demonstrating with a sample. The exact number of foundation chains can be found in the corresponding chart. Crochet the second stitch downward. Third stitch. Fourth stitch. Fifth stitch. Continue crocheting. Crochet the required number of chains. Place a marker on the last stitch. If you don't have a marker, you can use a safety pin or paperclip instead. This completes the foundation chain. Now start the first row. First, make 3 chains as the turning chain for the double crochet. 1, 2, 3. On the third stitch, pick up both strands on the edge. Place a marker. These 3 stitches count as 1 double crochet. The turning chain here corresponds to the chain with the marker. Skip down past the marker, the chain on the left side. Pick up the next chain and work a double crochet. The front side of this chain is the V-shaped loop. There's a raised horizontal bar on the back side. This bar is called the back ridge. Hook the V-shaped loop of the corresponding chain, both the front loop and the back ridge. Pick up these 2 strands. Work 1 double crochet. The technique for the double crochet is yarn over once with the hook. Insert into the corresponding position. Yarn over. Draw the yarn through. There are 3 loops on the hook. Yarn over and pull through the first 2 loops. 2 loops remain. Yarn over again. Draw through in once. 1 double crochet is completed. Move to the next chain space. Work another double crochet in the same hole. Yarn over. Insert. Draw the yarn through. Then yarn over. Pull through the first 2 loops on the hook. Repeat twice. Once. Twice. 2 double crochets are worked in 1 hole here. 1 chain space between the double crochets. We will work 2 double crochets and the chain in the middle. As 1 pattern repeat. Continue crocheting the pattern repeat downward. First skip the next 2 adjacent chains. Pick up the front loop of the next chain and the back ridge. Work 1 pattern repeat. First work 1 double crochet. Then 1 chain in the next stitch. And another double crochet in the same hole. After completing, continue skipping 2 chains. Pick up the front loop of the next chain and the back ridge. Work the corresponding pattern repeat. The following crocheting pattern is: skip 2 chains each time. Pick the corresponding chain and work the pattern repeat. At the chain space, pick both the front loop and back ridge. Continue crocheting downward. Finish this pattern repeat. There are 2 chains remaining at the back. First, skip the adjacent chain. Pick the last chain. Make 1 double crochet. The beginning and ending of this row are both 1 double crochet, and between the double crochet and the pattern repeat, skip 1 chain. Skip 2 chains between motifs. This completes the first row. On this side, place a marker at any position. This side is the right side of the piece. The texture of the double crochet is more neat. Work the second row downward. To work back and forth, you need to turn the piece over. Continue from the previous yarn tail. Chain 3 as the turning chain for the double crochet. On the third stitch, pick up 2 strands on the edge. Make a marker. These 3 stitches count as 1 double crochet, and the turning chain, corresponding to the last double crochet of the previous row. Skip the adjacent stitch downward. Later on, when you reach the pattern position, insert into the middle chain space of the pattern repeat. That is, between 2 double crochets. Work a pattern repeat accordingly. After completing, skip the double crochet position. Pick the middle of the next pattern repeat. Insert into the large space under the chain. Work the pattern repeat accordingly. Then pick the chain space in the middle of the pattern repeat. Work each pattern repeat one by one. Pay attention not to pick into the gap of the pattern repeat. Repeat this process. Finish the remaining part. Finish this pattern repeat. Skip the adjacent double crochet. Move down to the turning chain position. Pick at the stitch marker of the turning chain here. Work 1 double crochet accordingly. Match with the starting position. This completes the second row. Next, crochet the third row. Turn the piece. Before each row from now on, you'll need to turn the piece each time. I won't explain that part in detail later. Then chain 3 to start. As the turning chain for the double crochet. Mark the third chain from the hook. Starting from the next row onward, always begin with 3 chains. And the turning chain should match the last double crochet of the previous row. Then pick into each chain space of the pattern repeat accordingly and work the pattern repeat. Complete this row. Finish the last pattern repeat. Go down to the turning chain. Insert into the stitch markers space. Work a double crochet. The third row of crocheting is completed. Continue crocheting downward. After that, work 1 row at a time. Keep going until you reach the corresponding row count. Refer to the pattern chart for the exact number of rows. The stitch pattern and insertion position for this row are the same as the previous 2 rows. The method is quite simple, so I won't demonstrate further. Please complete the remaining part on your own. Once you finish the required rows, there's no need to cut the yarn. Next, we'll move on to crocheting the underarm section. That's all for the body section. The body part of the crocheting is now completed. Now we'll proceed with the underarm crocheting. The stitch techniques used are the same as before. Please watch my demonstration. I'll continue using the small sample for the demonstration here. At the underarm beginning position, you need to reserve a pattern. First, let's mark the position where the pattern will be reserved. The underarm of the left front piece is on the left side. Hold the piece with the right side facing you. Locate the left side of the last row on the body. On the finished product, count 3 patterns inward. My sample has fewer patterns, so I'll only count 2 patterns here. At the chain space in the middle of the pattern, make a mark. The reserved pattern is right next to it. Mark the position clearly. Start crocheting. At this point, the yarn tail is on the right hand side. Continue from the previous yarn tail. Chain 3 to start. Make a mark. Pick up into the chain space of the pattern behind. Work each corresponding pattern one by one. Keep crocheting until the stitch position before the stitch marker. Complete the pattern before the stitch marker. Pick down into the hole of the stitch marker. Work 1 double crochet. One pattern is left on this side. And the position of the turning chain is not crocheted yet. The stitch marker at this turning chain can be removed. With that, the first row of the underarm is done. Now crochet the second row down. The beginning of this row requires a decrease. Start with 3 chains as the turning chain. Since we're decreasing, the turning chain does not count as a stitch. No need to place a marker. Pick down into the chain space of the adjacent group. Work 1 double crochet correspondingly. Place a marker on this double crochet. Since the turning chain does not count as a stitch, the starting position is effectively 1 stitch less. Pick down to the next pattern position. Work the corresponding group evenly. Complete the last pattern position. Move down to the turning chain. Work 1 double crochet correspondingly. This completes the second row. Next, crochet the third row. This will be worked even. Start with 3 chains as the turning chain. Since no decrease is needed at the beginning, the turning chain counts as 1 stitch. Mark the corresponding position. Pick up the pattern positions moving backward. Work the corresponding group evenly. Move down to the decrease stitch from the previous row. Insert into the stitch markers space. Work 1 double crochet. Remember not to crochet into the turning chain. This completes the third row. The method for row 4 will be the same as row 2. Starting with a decrease is required. The remaining rows are the same as row 3. 1 double crochet at the beginning and end, and work the pattern in the middle. Repeat this process until reaching the corresponding row count. Refer to the chart for the exact number of rows. The following steps are simple, so I won't repeat the demonstration. Up to this point, the underarm section is fully explained. The underarm section of crocheting is completed. Now work on the neckline section. Leave one pattern unworked on one side. At the same time, perform decreases. The DC2 tog is also used here. Please watch my demonstration. I'll continue using the sample for the demonstration, with the right side facing you. The left front piece should be on the right side. Leave the pattern unworked, and the decrease will also be on the right side, which is the opposite of the underarm section. Again, we'll first mark the position, where the pattern will be left unworked, which is also the decrease position. Locate the right side of the last row at the underarm. Find the second pattern. Place a marker in its chain space. This is the decrease position. Begin crocheting from the marked position. You'll notice the yarn tail and the marked position are both on the right side. Here we use the carry yarn technique to bring the yarn to the marked position. First, stretch the loop. Pass the piece or skein through the loop from the inside. Tighten the yarn. Insert the hook into the marked position. Pull the yarn through. Make sure the yarn is not pulled too tight nor too loose. Keep the piece flat. At this point, the yarn tail has been carried over. This row begins with a decrease stitch. Continue from the previous yarn tail. First, make 3 chains as the turning chain. Also due to the decrease, the turning chain does not count as a stitch. No marker is used. Pick the chain space of the adjacent pattern, repeat downward. Correspondingly make a double crochet. Place a marker on the double crochet. The turning chain does not count as a stitch. The starting position is now 1 stitch less. Pick the corresponding position of the pattern, repeat downward. Work the corresponding pattern, repeat 1 by 1. Arrive at the stitch marker of the turning chain. Correspondingly make a double crochet. With this, the first row of the neckline is completed. Now work the second row. This row needs 2 decrease on the same side as the previous row's decrease. That is, at the end of this row. First, make 3 chains as the turning chain. Do not decrease at the beginning position. The turning chain counts as 1 stitch. Mark the 3rd stitch. Pay attention. Only when you need to decrease at the starting position. The turning chain does not count as a stitch. In all other cases, The turning chain counts as one stitch. Pick the chain space of the adjacent pattern, repeat downward. Work the corresponding pattern, repeat one by one. Keep crocheting until the pattern, repeat before the next stitch marker. Skip this pattern, repeat temporarily. When you reach the corresponding position, one pattern repeat remains downward. Align with the decrease position from the previous row. Perform the decrease here. Insert the hook into the chain space of the pattern, repeat. Work an unclosed double crochet. Yarn over the hook once. Insert. Yarn over and draw through. Then yarn over and pull through the first 2 loops. 2 loops remain. That's an unclosed double crochet. Pick the chain space of the stitch marker for the decrease position. Work an unclosed double crochet. Yarn over. Insert. Draw the yarn through. Yarn over and pull through the first 2 loops. Now there are 3 loops on the hook. Yarn over and draw through all loops at once. 1 DC2 tog is completed. Here, 2 double crochets are combined into 1 stitch. 1 less double crochet. Pay attention to this turning chain here. Leave it unworked. That completes the second row. Now work on the third row. This row begins with a decrease, matching the decrease direction of the previous row. Start with a turning chain of 3. No need to place a marker. Pick up through the chain space of the adjacent pattern, repeat below. Work 1 double crochet. Mark this double crochet. One stitch less at the beginning. For the following pattern positions, work each pattern, repeat correspondingly. At the stitch marker of the turning chain, work 1 double crochet correspondingly. This completes row 3. Continue to row 4. This row ends with a decrease. Start with a turning chain of 3. Place a marker. Pick up each pattern, repeat at the corresponding position below. Work each pattern, repeat correspondingly. Keep crocheting until reaching this marker. At the previous pattern, repeat. Leave this pattern, repeat unworked for now. Continue crocheting downward. Reach the corresponding position. perform a decrease going downward. Pick up the chain spaces of adjacent pattern, repeat. And the marker position. Work unclosed double crochets. One, 2. Then yarn over. Draw through all loops on the hook. Completed the DC2 tog. And completed row 4 at the same time. You can notice. On odd-numbered rows, decreases are always done at the beginning position. Even-numbered rows decrease at the end. Pay attention, when decreasing at the beginning position, the turning chain does not count as a stitch. When decreasing at the end position, the turning chain counts as one stitch. Repeat this process all the way to the last row. Pay attention, the last row is worked even. Try not to add or miss any stitches. The decrease method stays the same moving forward. I won't demonstrate further here. Please refer to the chart and complete the remaining part by yourself. After completing the required rows, finally, cut the yarn. Here I'll use a sample to demonstrate how to cut the yarn. First, secure with a chain. Leave a little yarn tail. Cut the yarn. Pull tight. Weave the yarn tail inside the piece. You can weave in a few more stitches. Trim any excess yarn tails. The starting yarn tail can be woven in the same way. You can also weave in a few more stitches. That's all for the explanation of the left front piece crocheting. Keep the stitch marker on the right side, wrong side. Remove the rest of the markers. The left front piece is now completed. Next, we'll crochet the right front piece. Since the front pieces are worked the same way, I won't demonstrate it here. I'll use a completed sample to explain. The right front piece is also divided into 3 sections. The body part is worked even. For the underarm, on the right side of the piece, leave a pattern on the right side. The first row of the underarm is marked at the 3rd pattern. The sample position is not for reference. When you meet yarn tails and marker positions on the same side, use the carry yarn across technique. Just bring the yarn to the marked position. Then make 3 chains as the turning chain. Mark it properly. Then work the corresponding pattern evenly. Rows 2 and 4 require decreasing at the end. After that, work even without increasing or decreasing. When you reach the neckline section, on the right side of the piece, leave a pattern on the left side and decrease. The decrease method is the same. It's just that here it becomes decreasing at the end on odd numbered rows, and decreasing at the beginning on even numbered rows. Pay attention to avoid extra or missing stitches. The last row is also worked even without increasing or decreasing. Cut the yarn after completing. Weave the beginning and ending yarn tails into the piece. The method is the same as before, so I won't repeat the demonstration. That's the explanation for crocheting the right front piece. After completing both front pieces, we'll move on to making the back piece, which is divided into three parts: the body, the underarm, and the back shoulder. The crocheting method for the body section is the same as the body area of the front pieces, except for the stitch count being different. Moving forward, please refer to the chart and complete the body section accordingly. After completing the body, crochet the underarm and back shoulder. Next, I'll demonstrate the crocheting method for these two areas. Let's start with the underarm. Both the left and right sides of the underarm require leaving a pattern and decreasing stitches at the same time. The stitch technique used is the same as the front piece. Please watch my demonstration. Before crocheting, let's mark the position first. Here, I'm demonstrating with a sample. Pick up the piece, find the last row of the body. Starting from the pattern repeat at the very edge, count in the corresponding number of pattern repeat. The finished product has 3 pattern repeat. The quantity in the sample isn't for reference. Make a mark. The two sides are the reserved positions. The positions are now marked. Begin crocheting. Place the yarn tail on the right hand side. Here, there's a pattern repeat interval between the yarn tail and the marked position. We'll carry the yarn across. Bring the yarn to the marked position. Pull a large loop. Pass the piece or skein through the loop. Pull tight. Insert the hook into the marked position. Pull the yarn through. Keep the piece flat. Then make 3 turning chains. Mark it. Move to the next pattern repeat. Work into each stitch correspondingly. When you reach the next stitch marker, work 1 double crochet into the corresponding stitch. The first row of the underarm is now complete. Continue with the second row. Decrease at both the beginning and end of this row. Pick up from the previous yarn tail. Make 3 turning chains. Due to the decrease, the turning chain does not count as a stitch. Do not mark. Move to the next adjacent pattern repeat. Work 1 double crochet into the corresponding stitch. Mark it. From then on, pick the corresponding positions of each pattern repeat. Work the pattern repeat evenly without increasing or decreasing. Continue working until the last pattern repeat. This pattern repeat and the turning chain next to it, leave them unworked for now. When reaching the corresponding position, pick the large chain space of the pattern repeat and the marked stitch of the turning chain. Work a DC2 tog. Decreases were made at both ends of this row. The second row under the arm is now completed. Continue crocheting from here on. From now on, decrease at both ends on the fourth row. All other rows are worked evenly without increasing or decreasing. Pay attention to mark the turning chain. Make sure not to miss any stitches while crocheting. The following steps are quite simple. I won't repeat the demonstration. You can finish it on your own. Complete the remaining part of the crochet. After finishing the underarm section, there's no need to cut the yarn. Continue crocheting down to the back shoulder. Divide and crochet the left and right sides separately. Each side of the back shoulder requires 2 rows of crocheting, and decreases are needed. The stitch technique used is the same as before. Please watch my demonstration. Before crocheting, we need to mark the positions of both sides of the back shoulder. This is a sample where the underarm section has been crocheted, and I've also marked the positions here. Let me explain the positions clearly. Find the last row of the underarm. Starting from the edge pattern repeat, count inward the corresponding number of pattern repeat. Then at the corresponding pattern repeats, chain space, make a mark. The exact number of pattern repeat can be found in the corresponding chart. Once the positions are marked, we'll begin crocheting. Pick up the piece. Place the yarn tail on the right hand side. We'll start by making a turning chain. For the back shoulder on this side, connect from the previous yarn tail. Chain 3 as the turning chain. Mark the position. Work the corresponding pattern repeat one by one. Keep crocheting all the way down to the stitch position before the marker. Complete the pattern repeat before the marker. Pick up into the marked stitch. Make 1 double crochet. Row 1 is done. Now work on row 2. Turn the piece over. This row starts with a decrease. Chain 3 to begin. No marker needed. Pick up into the chain space of the adjacent pattern repeat. Make 1 double crochet. Work each pattern repeat one by one. When reaching the turning chain position, work 1 double crochet correspondingly. Row 2 is completed. Now it's time to cut the yarn. Secure with a chain. Leave a yarn tail of about 5 centimeters. Cut the yarn. Pull tight. Weave the yarn tail into the piece. The stitch markers at the beginning and end can be removed. One side of the back shoulder is now completed. Next, crochet the other side of the back shoulder. Locate the previously crocheted back shoulder at the first row. Position the right side of this row facing you. This is the side where the double crochet texture appears more neat and even. Then locate the other marker position. Begin at this location. Pick up the yarn again. Tie a knot with the yarn. Leave a small loop. Insert the hook into the marked stitch. Pull the loop through. Adjust the loop size. Then make 3 chains as the turning chain. Place a marker. Move to the next pattern position. Work the pattern repeat corresponding to each stitch. Pick up the third chain at the turning chain. The 2 strands at the edge. Match and crochet 1 double crochet. This completes the first row. Move on to the second row. Turn the piece over. This row needs a decrease at the end. Make 3 chains. Work the corresponding pattern repeat 1 by 1. All the way to the pattern repeat before the stitch marker. Temporarily leave this pattern repeat unworked. When you reach the corresponding position, pick up the adjacent pattern repeat below, and at the stitch marker, work a DC2 tog at the corresponding position. This completes the second row. Cut the yarn. Weave the beginning and ending yarn tails into the piece. Remove the stitch marker. The other side of the back shoulder is now done. The back shoulder section is now completed. The same first row of double crochet texture, the neater side, is the right side of the piece. Place a marker at any position on the right side. Up to this point, the back piece crocheting is explained. Next, we'll make the sleeves. This will be explained in 3 sections: the even section, the increasing section, and the decreasing section. Work from bottom to top. In addition to the stitch patterns used before, here we also use the DC2-in-1. Please watch my demonstration. First, begin with a foundation chain, and work the even section. The stitch pattern here is simple, so I won't demonstrate it. You can crochet following the chart directly. Next, I'll demonstrate the crocheting method for the increasing section. Here, I'm demonstrating with a sample, continuing from the previous yarn tail. First, make 3 chains as the turning chain. Mark the stitch. Insert the hook underneath the corresponding stitch below the turning chain. The corresponding stitch, which is right here. Work 1 double crochet. Including the turning chain. This position is equivalent to working 2 double crochets in the same stitch, which increases 1 stitch. Pick up the adjacent pattern, repeat downward. Correspondingly work the pattern, repeat. When reaching the turning chain position, at the stitch marker, work a DC 2 in 1. This increase is working 2 double crochets in the chain space. One, 2. Complete the increase. Similarly, 1 stitch is increased at the end here. The first row of the increasing section is done. Correspondingly work the row 2. Work row 2 evenly. Chain 3. Mark it. Then, skip the stitch below the turning chain. Work a double crochet into the adjacent stitch. Below, work the pattern, repeat correspondingly. Into the pattern, repeat. Work the last pattern, repeat. There's 1 remaining double crochet, and the turning chain position. Pay attention to the double crochet of the pattern, repeat here. It's not included. First, pick up the stitch at the double crochet next to the turning chain. Pick up the stitch and work 1 double crochet correspondingly. Work 1 double crochet into the turning chain position. That completes the second row. Now work the third row. Start with 3 chains as the turning chain. Place a marker. Move down to the next chain space. Then pick up the stitch of the adjacent double crochet. Make 1 double crochet. Pay attention not to pick up the stitch underneath the turning chain on the corresponding stitch. Move down to the pattern repeat position. Work the corresponding pattern repeat one by one. Work the last pattern repeat. Skip the double crochet of the pattern repeat. Pick up the adjacent double crochet. Work 1 double crochet on the corresponding stitch. Next chain space behind. Corresponding to the starting position. Work 1 double crochet on the corresponding stitch at the marker. Complete the crocheting of row 3. Now work row 4. Start with 3 chains as the turning chain. Place a marker. Then pick up the adjacent chain space. Work a pattern repeat on the corresponding position. After completing, pick the pattern repeat separately. Work pattern repeat into each corresponding position one by one. Continue working until reaching the last pattern repeat. Complete the last pattern repeat position. Skip the double crochet of the pattern repeat. 1 remaining double crochet below. Chain and turning chain position. Pick up at the chain space here. Work a pattern repeat on the corresponding position. After completing, pick the marker position. Work 1 double crochet. Beginning and ending of this row, each end has 1 extra pattern repeat. This completes row 4. Next, work rows 5 to 6. These 2 rows are worked even. Both ends are 1 double crochet. Work pattern repeat into each corresponding position in the middle. The stitch pattern is simple. I won't demonstrate here. You can complete these 2 rows on your own. I've already completed row 6 here. Work row 7 downward. Add 1 double crochet at both ends of this row. The method is the same as row 1. Start with 3 chains as the turning chain. Place a marker. Then hook into the corresponding stitch under the turning chain. Work 1 double crochet. At the pattern repeat position in the back, work the corresponding pattern repeat one by one. Reach the turning chain position at the end. Work a DC 2-in-1. Work 2 double crochets into 1 hole. Completed the crocheting of row 7. The crocheting method for the following rows is similar to the previous rows. The stitch pattern remains the same. I'll stop demonstrating here. Please refer directly to the chart. Finish crocheting the remaining part of the increasing section. While crocheting, be mindful not to have extra or missing stitches. No need to cut the yarn after finishing the increasing section. Next, move on to crochet the decreasing section. Here I'll explain using the finished product. From now on, the beginning and ending stitch counts correspond. When encountering decreases, you need to decrease at both the beginning and ending. The turning chain doesn't count as a stitch when decreasing at the starting position, just like before. In other cases, the turning chain counts as a stitch. Please pay attention and don't mark the wrong position. The decreasing method is the same as for the front piece. I won't repeat the demonstration from now on. After finishing the last row, cut the yarn and weave in the ends. That concludes the explanation of the decreasing section. And that's also the end of the sleeve section explanation. Simply crochet the other sleeve using the same method.